So I guess it's like 4:02 now. We can go ahead and I guess we can get it started. I assume that a couple more people will flow in, but hello everybody and welcome to the State of Real Estate with West Growth. My name's Noah Goldberg. I work for KettleSpace and we're powering this event. Um, and yeah, so the overall demeanor and ambiance of the event is open discussion, impromptu. So as we ask questions, feel free to elaborate on those questions and don't feel like you have to pinpoint direct answers. Um, and yeah, if everybody could potentially, if you know how to mute your microphone while you're not talking to make sure that nobody's disturbed. Um, and and yeah, so in saying that, I'm gonna pass over the mic to Tom with West Growth.
Great, thanks, Noah. Hey, everybody. It's great to see everybody from all over the place. Hello. Number of our colleagues are here from West, a number of our clients, like our good friends at KettleSpace. And we really want to make this, as Noah said, an open kind of discussion. We'll get to that in a second. There are some folks here that may not be aware of West. We basically have built a really cool platform. If you ever want to check out the website, it's westgrowth.com. It was co-founded by the guy sitting to my right. I don't know where he is on your screen. Co-founded by him. This is cool. I feel like I'm on the Brady Bunch. I have that view going on. He started with a mission to help entrepreneurs generate a meaningful return on sacrifice. Because I think we all know in this room, the screen, that it does take a lot to get to that next level of success. And we have a very interesting way of both getting your focus on strategy and the financial part of your business in a way that streamlines your pathway to getting to a place where you're very attractive. And in fact, you're one of the top 5% performers in terms of attracting investment dollars and having success for your business. So the core of what we do is financially focused and strategic focused, and we make it very attractive. And in full disclosure, as many of you know, KettleSpaces happens to be one of our clients as well. So one of the things that we find most valuable in what we do is bringing our clients together, especially industry specific, because there's just so much to glean from each other, you know, insights and best practices and trends. And also, honestly, the commiseration, like what pain you're feeling, that's so valuable. And we really honestly miss that. And I know, you know, KettleSpace is now going to tell you a little bit about what they've done in a very interesting way to shift. But we want to put most of the focus on having this kind of open discussion around a few topics we're going to throw out there. So again, thank you all for showing up. I'm going to throw it over this way in my screen to Daniel, who's going to give you a brief overview of how KettleSpace has made that shift and how we can all benefit from that. Take it away, Daniel.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tom, for the intro. Hi, guys. I'm Dan. I'm one of the founders of KettleSpace. Thank you all for being here. The main goal for this exercise is really just to learn as much as we can from each other, because we're all experiencing some pain, some potential upside, right? There's a lot going on right now, but we're all seeing it from a different perspective. So I think the more communicating we're doing, the more I'm continuing to learn about what best practices are as we continue here forward. So we as a business, KettleSpace, we are a network and community of co-working spaces that primarily operate out of restaurants, hotels, and retail spaces. So by doing that, we can make it really affordable for you. And as a user, you, for one low monthly price, can get access to all of them. With COVID, we can't necessarily offer people space, or at least not for another month or so. So what we've done in the interim is develop a platform called Kettle Virtual. It's effectively a combination of a Slack group in which members are sharing and connecting. Today, for example, someone said, I have a document that was translated into Greek, and I need to know if it actually was just run through Google Translate or whether it was actually done well. So I went into my network, found a friend of mine who speaks Greek fluently, and they were able to help one of our members. So we do all this stuff for free. We're just here to pay it forward during COVID, and we'll be getting back to space shortly, and we'll have some exciting stuff coming. But in the interim, if you're interested, we'd love to have you as part of Kettle Virtual. We do all kinds of interesting content, everything from this to yoga classes that Anita, who is on this, runs. We do fitness, monthly chats. We do trivia, all kinds of good stuff, both educational and fun. So if you're interested, please contact me or Noah or anyone, and we'd love to have you as part of our free community. And with no further ado, I'll kick it back to Tom, I believe.
I'll kick it over to, I think, Noah. You're going to kick it off, Noah, with a question?
Yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask some pretty broad questions. We're going to go around the horn. Please just introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, where you work. You don't necessarily have to work in real estate. So these questions could also relate to your own business, even if it's not real estate, or kind of how you anticipate the state of real estate moving forward post-COVID. So the first question is, how has COVID affected your real estate business? Very broad, feel free to elaborate. And I'll kick it over to Daniel Chu. What's up, Daniel? Good friend. You're muted.
How you doing, Noah? You can hear me now? All right. So I'm Daniel Chu. I own a business called CMIT Solutions. So we're a part-time CIO and IT service provider. And what we've been doing lately is really just helping people adjust from going into the office to the remote work environment, focusing on cybersecurity, data protection, making sure that as they move to that remote environment, that they continue to be secure in what they do and when they do their work, and also that their data is backed up, and that they're developing a strategy in order to adjust. So that's kind of what we've been working on right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. You pass it over to Joel. Joel, the question is, how has COVID-19 affected your business, and how are you adapting to that?
How am I doing?
Open-ended question.
I'm in the rental real estate business in the affordable housing space. How has it affected it? So the management company I work with, they ended up hiring somebody who was tried to tie into community resources to help tenants out in terms of like rent and then just sort of basic necessities. So I think everybody's trying to embrace those values in terms of renting and interacting with their tenants. Colorado, I think, was hit, but it was sort of less hit than the East Coast. We've been open for, I think, much longer than you all have. So people are starting to get back to work. I think the federal government's funding, I think that has helped people pay rents. Rents are still being paid pretty regularly, not necessarily at the same level as last year, but still pretty strong. The problem with Denver and Metro Denver is the substantial lack of affordable housing. And many of the solutions are sort of demand side oriented. So it's not really doing anything about creating additional housing. And that sort of defies COVID, but COVID has also sort of exacerbated the income gap out here pretty substantially. So.
Cool. Thank you so much for your insight, Joel.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Drew?
Yeah, Drew Fabricant, run a platform called Scout. We are in the lead conversion, lead nurture game for residential real estate. We have algorithms that send buyers and sellers to the best real estate agents who help them buy and sell real estate. As of about 2 quarters ago, we started off doing B2B. So we were actually getting the agents to send us their entire CRM and lead list. We would nurture and convert their leads, either send them back when they were ready and qualified, or send them out to the best agent to try to recoup some referral fees for them. we were going really, really fast. We had about 10x growth when we employed that strategy, and then it was about 30% month over month until COVID. We saw a 98% reduction in new business for about a month and a half. Didn't know if we would survive. Pivoted our strategy to real estate agent coaching and consulting. We did that for about 2 months, partnered with the former chief growth officer of Douglas Elliman. And that ended up being wonderful for us because it actually helped us on the supply side to get more and better agents into our network. Fast forward about a month and a half later to about a week and a half ago, and we are now busier than we've ever been. It's as if, this thing never happened, and you are seeing crazy pent up supply and demand in the real estate sector everywhere outside of New York City and San Francisco. But all secondary, tertiary markets, suburbs, we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest and volume there.
Did things slow down a lot outside of New York and San Fran? Like, did you see a slowdown?
Yeah, it depends on the MSA. You saw anywhere from a 30 to, New York was the worst at around 82% slowdown in terms of new listing volume. But for the most part, everything dipped for about a month, anywhere from like 30 to 50%, and then slowly, gradually came back up to a point where now you have a lot of pent up supply that's finally flooding the market. But there's, the demand didn't necessarily go away. So it turned into a crazy seller's market in a lot of these places.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Cool. Thank you so much. Antonio?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. What's up, man? How you doing?
Hi, how are you? Well, I live in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So I just recently moved from New York. I was working for Zumper. I was at Zumper as a real estate agent. Prior to that, I was in Douglas Elliman Property Management and whatnot. I moved to Puerto Rico because I like the opportunities here regarding co-working space, and the growth of accelerators growing and whatnot. I was curating a WhatsApp group regarding co-working spaces, places that people who come to visit Puerto Rico could navigate. Curating a list, we decided to take that platform and apply it in a market base. So what we do now is we're curating spaces and have these hosts that could be a property owner. It's what Liquid Space does in the US. We're mostly focused on creating work hubs for new startups in Puerto Rico. So it's small groups of like 2 or 3, and we're taking places that are unconventional. You would say CPA or architect, some conference rooms that are available, and we convert those into meeting rooms and work hubs. So it's called Kiosco. It's like getting a kiosk in certain spaces, and that's what we do. And we were to launch in March, and everything just was on a standstill. So what we've done is just keep people informed. We became more of a directory of spaces that will probably open, keeping people up to date with emails. But that's my experience as far as being in Puerto Rico now. I guess mostly everyone is facing a similar challenge, a stress test, you would say, of business models similar to mine. Liquid Space and KettleSpace, and of course what was Spacious in New York. So it's a different new market here in San Juan, Puerto Rico, but it's an exciting one. So
That's awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much. Francesca, how about you?
Hi, good afternoon, or whatever time it is everywhere, for everyone else. I am CEO and co-founder of a company called Home. We pop up amenities, anything from fitness classes to musicians in the lobby to large-scale networking events in office and multifamily properties for the landlord as an amenity to the tenants, so completely free to tenants. on a subscription basis to the landlord. And we were an incredibly high touch, in-person, community building, anti-social distance company up until March. And March 16th, so on the 9th, we preemptively closed all of our spaces, just seeing what was going on, how it was traveling to the US. And we had maybe 3 phone calls from concerned landlords that were considering closing their amenity spaces and kind of talking to us about, like, could we do it outside? What, where could we move? And instead of creating like a temporary plan, we just closed all of our services off on the 9th and opened up for all virtual on the 16th. So basically took 10 days and completely changed all of our technology, trained all of our service providers to provide live, tested everybody, sent everybody equipment, and just kind of had a sleepless 10 days. And it's been really great. We doubled our number of properties, almost tripled. And we moved from being in 3 markets to being in 24. Kind of every single portfolio rollout where we were coming up against roadblocks because we had to talk to different people in the company. All the roadblocks were gone because we had this opportunity where you could syndicate, one property would pay for the services, and then you could, at super low cost, just share those same services to the rest of your buildings. And so it just, all roadblocks were gone when the price was right. Yeah, and now we're negotiating, or I guess navigating reopening in certain cities. A lot of our landlords are hopeful to get back to normal. And we are closely monitoring cities that have reopened, where we technically have virtual services right now. And I think we're probably going to be one of the last to go back in person. Margins are amazing in virtual. The attraction's really great, just really great attendance and engagement from the tenants. And the economics are kind of silly for landlords to pay so much more, 2 to 10 times the amount they're paying for virtual services, to have a social distanced event or class with like 5 or 10 people. So we're trying to use that logic to slow it all down, but it will be a massive operation that we're still building out plans for opening back up. That's my daughter.
Thank you so much.
So, hey, Francesca, that's amazing. Tom here.
Hi.
So are you the 24, hi, Francesca, congratulations, that's awesome. So the 24 new markets you're in, you said you were it was slow going to get into those in a physical capacity, and then when you went virtual, it allowed you to get in. Will that translate, you think, into the in-person services in those then?
So we negotiated for what the in-person services would look like once reopening occurred in all of those contracts. So we set a timeline for reopening based on the government pulling back social distancing policies. We gave them a 6-week ramp-up timeline for essentially new cities that we didn't have physical services in yet. And we know what their subscription rate's gonna change to, and everybody's agreed to everything. So it should just naturally roll into an in-person contract. We shall see.
Awesome. So far, we're not seeing like incredible like damage. You know what I mean? Like, you guys are all adjusting really amazingly to this situation.
I think the PPP helped. I heard somebody else say federal funding. Certainly the most damage to us was like landlord collections. You know?
My favorite new investor is Uncle Sam.
Cool, guys. So Claudia, are you there? We can't see you, but we can.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. How are you?
Sorry to be the videoless one. I'm using my monitor. So
No worries.
were you going to ask me the same question, or were you going to finish?
Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. How are you doing? How's COVID affected your real estate business, if you do work for a real estate business or run one? And how are you adjusting?
So hi everyone, my name is Claudia Steer, and I'm the founder and CEO of a home design platform for the multifamily market called Rented. And essentially think of it as interior design as an amenity at scale for buildings. And so I am in the process of like working on the prototype specifically for the building. I'm pretty early stage. But COVID, I'm in New York City. And so COVID, I think, at least for now, kind of put a bit of a damper on like the momentum. I think developers and property managers are just kind of being very, very tentative with, how and when to please existing tenants, and just being mindful of where new dollars are what their risk tolerance is for sort of a new offering in the marketplace. And so, I'm getting lots of interest, but no one's quite pulling the trigger. There's a bit of a wait and see dynamic happening right now. So what I've done, like others on the call, to kind of pivot is refine what is the B2C component of the offering, right? So how am I refining the process to transforming spaces on the tenant side? So I've done a soft launch specifically with the individual tenants. Again, just to refine the process, get deeper insights, and hopefully have better sort of like engagement metrics to amp up my pitch when B2B, is sort of ready to take off. So it's been a bit of not a full on hamper, but, I think it's just slowed up some of my momentum. But either way, I'm still getting lots of good interest. So hopefully things will turn around soon.
So you work with the landlords. You work with the landlords to provide interior design for their tenants. Is that your model?
Yes, that's right.
Did you say you also provide access to like furnishings?
Yeah. So it's both of those. So it's a B2B2C model in terms of I customize some base level furnishing packages specific to the building. But then I offer additional services for the tenants for installation, sourcing of additional furniture, feature walls, etc., as well as conversion services at the end of their lease. So it's a kind of full-on interior design service package for the renter, but a streamlined like amenity offering for the building with hopes to drive retention.
That's really cool, Claudia. I mean, there's so many people that are renting and they don't know how long they're going to be there, and like they would love to have a cool apartment, but they don't want to, they don't want to go through all the rigors of figuring that out, and you provide that for them. That's a really cool model. You're just getting started, huh?
I am getting started, but COVID has actually been a plus in terms of people really caring about their spaces right now. Even renters, it's like, oh crap, I've got to work here. This, this futon life isn't going to work for me. So we are seeing some changes in terms of people's appetite for it, which is great.
Well, please keep West Growth in mind, because we're happy to advise you and talk to you about as things roll on.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Great model. Love it.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much, Claudia. Al, are you there? Al? Looks like we've lost Al, guys. How about you, Dan?
Me, Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So for us, similar to Fran in certain ways, because we offer community to people and give them access to, to physical spaces. And similar to Antonio, right? A lot of overlap here because we are real estate. That's what we do, is generally bring people together or support them in some way. For us, we've really focused on virtual in the short term. So up until March, we were seeing some really strong growth, especially with the closure of one of our major competitors. A lot of people are coming over to our platform, which was great. A lot of happy partners, a lot of happy users. So COVID hits and we do what we got to do. And so we pause everyone's memberships because our main utility to them is offering local warm spaces for them to go work in, and we couldn't do that anymore. So we paused everyone's memberships, and so going back down to zero revenue, like where I started, was a little bit of a bummer. But we, as a team, sort of banded together, and we're like, how can we help our members the most, right? If our members needed us before, they need us even more now, right? It's not like they're desperate, but how can we be helpful? So we picked up the phone, and Ryan and Noah actually did a lot of this and called as many of them as we possibly could and asked, first off, how are you? So we had a couple thousand conversations, and we were like, secondly, how can we help the most? And what we heard pretty consistently was, a lot of our members are freelancers, and they sell their services for an hourly rate. And a lot of their client, like the pipelines had been drying up, or the scopes were being diminished somewhat, as everyone, was a little bit shocked as to what was going on. So our goal was twofold. One, to help people stay connected, because not everyone, right? Some of us, I can see, like Fran has kids and a husband, right? A lot of us are with others, but not everyone is. That's not the truth for everyone. So we want to keep people, especially people who are might not have access to as much connection as we possibly can. And so that's what our events are mainly focused on. But more importantly than that, people were telling us that they needed help. So we built basically an offer ask platform where people can ask for help if they're on a project and they need some expertise. So that translating into Greek, is it something that I can do personally? No. But do I have someone in my network that can do it? Yes, absolutely. And that's the idea. That is the power of a social network, the ability to tap into other people's resource networks and get value ideally very quickly. So we've seen some nice uptake in the offer ask. And then the flip side of that is trying to save people money doing things they're already doing. So we now have our perks page is now turned into many pages of potential perks. We have close to $1 million in savings on everything that people are already using in their tech stack. So everything from AWS to Stripe to Slack to now Notion or Typeform or some of these new no-code tools. The goal is just to, if people are going to be using these things, save some money while they're doing it, and put money back where it matters in their pockets and their families, closer to their teams. So that's really where we've been focused. Now, as things start to thaw, we're going to start to turn our focus again back to return to space. And so maybe, am I getting ahead of myself? We're not talking about return to space yet. But if you're curious, this has been really hard on a lot of our existing partners, primarily restaurants, as we all know. Being city dwellers, rents are pretty high, and when revenues drop to zero, they didn't necessarily have that same flexibility that we did to sort of snap our fingers and say, hey, we'll be back when things are better. They have lease obligations, and so a lot of restaurants are really under the gun right now. And if they haven't folded already, they're looking for ways to get back to normal and build their revenues. So for us, we think and based on our conversations, there's as much demand as there ever has been for a new way for our partners to really integrate with us and find high margin revenue streams. So we're cautiously optimistic as we return. And I know, based on the emails we get on a daily basis about members itching to get back into space, that people are ready. So we're going to do it. I promise you guys, we'll do it as soon as we freaking can.
Awesome. Robert, are you there? No, Robert.
No, I am. I just had to unmute.
How are you, man?
I'm doing well. My business is, I've got two businesses. One is prefab construction. So we help design buildings, then we contract out factories and we build them in factories. And that business, as horrible, COVID is a horrible thing, but it's actually helped our business because more people are looking, at least at this time, to be in less dense areas. It had a big effect on our business because we were working with a factory in China, building houses there and then shipping them to the US. Now we're working with a factory in Pennsylvania because of supply chain issues. So it opened up a new material source for us. But I think this has been accelerated by COVID, but it's a project that we were working on beforehand. We're working with a group that is building 20 single-family vacation home rentals in the Catskills in upstate New York. And a lot of people have left places like New York City, at least temporarily. People who are cooped up in apartments and just want to be in bigger spaces, or people who are staying in their apartments but on that particular vacation rental business want to take a couple of days off and go somewhere beyond Central Park and get some space. So our company is kind of a remote company because it's myself and two other people in New York, and then we have an office in Pittsburgh, and then in the Bay Area where we have a bunch of projects. So we were all working out of co-working spaces. We're all working out of home. I'm actually in the Catskills, so I'm kind of an ideal user for that particular project in a house in the Catskills. So that's in that business. The second business I have is raising equity for owners and developers across the country, not so much on single family homes, but generally on bigger projects. That business slowed down dramatically with COVID because we're still trying to emerge from a environment where price discovery and underwriting is very challenging. People in this part of my business are looking daily at rent collections. I mostly deal with multifamily, although I've in the past raised money for other property types. And we just got a mandate for a recapitalization of a large multifamily portfolio. So our business is fine. We have no reason or right to complain, but we're in a very strange time in terms of people not really having data at this point about when things are going to fully emerge. So states, slowly, but on different schedules, are lifting restrictions. But nobody really knows what unemployment is going to look like a year from now, or when exactly this vaccine will happen, or where there might be a second wave. So investors, of course, like a little more certainty than that. So it's been very challenging in real estate, as I'm sure a lot of you know. Like in other areas of the economy, there's big piles of cash that are looking to buy distressed. So that further it makes it hard to raise capital for more conventional deals that are not so distressed because of all this, all these people waiting around for these golden distress deals, and they're not materializing as much as people expect because of the way the banks have been lending the last couple of years, and there's all kinds of differences between this part of the cycle versus the last down cycle that we had. And people who haven't been in business for a while are not so used to this, and people who have been in the business for a while are deploying their capital differently. And also a lot of people who are sitting on a lot of cash also are sitting on a big portfolio of owned real estate that they have to work out now. So like I said, that business has slowed down a little. I project that over time we'll get to some kind of equilibrium, but also that business is me and a few partners, and we're all in remote locations anyway. So we can't wait to get back to our KettleSpaces.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tom, you're muted.
Hey, Robert, do you raise money for commercial developers, like people building business spaces?
Well, I raise money for real estate developers and owners. Mostly I'm raising capital for people who are either acquiring or recapitalizing existing property, but I also have developer clients too. Like I said, most of what I do is multifamily, but really we're agnostic as to property type, as to the stage of development, as to the location within the US. Obviously, when it comes to raising capital, not, some people not so obviously, but then, the key factors are, who you're raising the money for, which for investors could be as important as the property. But I'm more working with established owners and developers as opposed to startup real estate developers. It could be a startup concept, but they have to have some track record of successful track record of developing. But yes, if somebody has a novel idea, I mean, co-working is kind of an interesting space in terms of real estate equity because of the big WeWork situation. But if you have a really good business model like KettleSpace does, and there's some, KettleSpace obviously is taking advantage of existing spaces in that building. But if you're building, something that people are, that you're going to be able to avoid the mismatch that WeWork had in, long-term leases with short-term tenants, and there's some novel idea to it. Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing we'd be interested in looking at.
Yeah, what I was getting at is, you figure how COVID's going to be creating new trends, and Daniel, I'm sure this resonates with you, because there's got to be a trend of people working more remotely moving forward, right? In corporations, they've gotten used to it. They've set up new. So I was just curious if, from a corporate development standpoint, that's got to be on, that's got to be on the radar, right? Like, there's just not going to be maybe as much need or desire to build out these big corporate spaces because you want to have more remote working, et cetera, because it's become a pattern,
For sure. I mean, there's a couple of interesting trends in office that you guys may know about, but there's now this idea of decentralization, right? For a long time, for the last 10 years, suburban office has not been a very big target of real estate equity. Right? We've just seen this, growing numbers in terms of people moving to urban areas, urbanization, who wants to be out in the suburbs, who's left in the suburbs, a lot of suburban office buildings, nothing to do with COVID, before COVID, had very large vacancies. So people in the suburbs were looking to invest in credit tenant buildings, whether it was a single tenant, people would rather buy Walgreens and things like that, or government buildings. But now, because of COVID, and it's not so much, there's a couple of different things. One is the space itself, right? So there's all kinds of I get all these emails and inquiries, all kinds of new ways that people are thinking about how to design office space. Right. So the whole idea of the open space is we're now reverting, or at least some people are thinking about reverting to a bunch of smaller offices and not having people sit on top of each other. And, the statistics of how many square foot per office worker, which has been, increasingly decreasing, that all might change. And ironically, there are some big companies in urban areas that need more office space because they want to spread out their workers. But, what I was talking about before is decentralizing, and that is less about the design of the spaces than a lot of companies understanding that they'll get better output from their employees, and maybe a better pool of employees if they don't require them to commute into, the main office buildings, because people are not commuting now, but people will still be skittish about public transportation. And there's going to be an overhang, even if in, a year from now or 6 months from now, hopefully they come up with a vaccine. It's not going to change everything. We're not going to go back to pre-COVID times, but it will change a lot. So more people will be would be willing to move out to the suburbs because for reasons, they don't want to be in the dense urban environments, and more people will be willing not to work in the head office, and more people will want to fill up those suburban buildings. There is someone has come to me with an idea for a suburban model for co-working, small buildings, and they actually have drawn up some designs about how they think it could solve some of these COVID type concerns. So there's different. I also heard from somebody that we work with on the material supplying side that there's a big shortage of plexiglass because some of these big office, these big companies are putting in a lot of plexiglass in their offices, and now that's become like a scarcer commodity. So there's a lot of interesting ramifications on the office space. But yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in hearing more about a group that's qualifying it as looking for equity.
Yeah, really interesting, Robert. Yeah, we could get into that whole thing about what office spaces or environments are doing now to be more COVID ready in the future, right? I mean, that could be a whole topic of discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's something that I know we want to have a town hall or discussion about is, just what does return to work look like? So that's like one of our top questions. And I think our flexible business model allows us to be ample in that space. So we'll definitely be putting on a discussion centered around that topic. But I want to hear from the West Growth guys about maybe not like, I know you guys don't run specifically a real estate business, but what feedback do you have? Like, I guess one good question would be like, how do you instill confidence in your customers during a time like this, or confidence in your partners? Sean, what do you think?
Well, thank you for asking that question. Thanks, KettleSpace, for putting this on. It's great. The one thing I've noticed, and so many people come to me and talk to me about what's going on, is although things have changed, businesses are still doing great. People have just pivoted the right way. Some companies decided to do nothing, and they're hurting because of it. The companies that weren't going to do well, and they were hurting beforehand, nothing changed. Just kind of accelerated the process for them. But certain businesses are doing better than others, just like you would see in any other flux in business and changes in the business environment. And certain businesses are doing much better. Certain tech that is in other industries are doing better than maybe the travel and hospitality industry. And that's just kind of business. And you have to be able to be ready for that. But we at West have definitely seen changes. We've had to make changes ourselves, but we've been having some of our best months ever as we've been growing and bringing on clients and helping them, because it's the key to investment. Who's out there, who's investing, who's writing the checks, and how do you get ready for them? And the best thing we could tell clients is, even though it's a tough time, there's a lot of uncertainty, now's the time to get your house in order. Now's the time to look towards your business, because you might not be as busy doing other things, and it's time to start building that infrastructure. So as things get better, which we see they are, you're ready. And no one wants to see you just decided to take 4 months off, go on vacation, close up shop, and not focus on what you're doing. You actually hunkered down, and companies like Drew, like Home, they did what it took to really hunker down and build up their businesses. And I don't want to use this time for other people, but I did have a question. I don't know if now's the time for questions or we should leave it to the end, but I did want to throw something out there. With the changes we're seeing in actual office culture, with companies moving a lot more towards work from home, this has proven to so many large employers out there that work from home is possible, and there's a lot of ability to cut overhead because of it. Do you see your businesses fluctuating more, or do you see the ability to capitalize on that because big office culture is not going to be what it was? People will be moving more into the suburbs, more into remote. I mean, most of our conversation today has been companies are moving more into remote working, people are going into the suburbs. How are your businesses could you see your business affected by that? And how are you pivoting towards that more?
Francesca, what do you
I'll leave
think?
that open to anyone.
It's scary how that's so obvious in this conversation, and how focused on reopening and how dead set that reopening is going to be linear my clients are. They're focused on safety protocols inside the office, how the elevator is going to work, and they see it as a slowly but surely we're going to have 40%, then 20% more, then 20% more, then 20%, all the way up to 100%. Is their expectation. I mean, maybe it's because office leases are 5 to 10 years. And they're, anybody with any kind of mixed use property is like far more focused on their retail than they are anything in office right now. Because they're still seeing 99% of 96, 97% of their office revenues come in. But it's actually shocking to me. There's not a lot of talk about a second wave going back into quarantine. It's also talk about linear growth, and it's there's very little talk about losing a percent of population to us. I have heard like CBRE talk about like satellite offices, like you said earlier, where there's like an HQ, and now the HQ is going to be same square footage, but with everybody socially distanced. They're now going to add these suburban outposts. Some companies are doing that, but our clients are just not talking about it, but we're insulating ourselves by focusing a little bit more of our business on multifamily right now. But even there, you're seeing everybody leave the city. So I'm just following the lead of my clients right now. But I do see it, like I'm a pessimist. I think that the businesses are gonna really struggle, and we've been analyzing who is really well capitalized in our client book and who is not, to kind of anticipate how the revenues are gonna follow. Offering lower price services like virtual, keeping those going, even as we come back into the real world, things like that, to try and keep the ones that are gonna be financially struggling. I don't know, what has everybody else seen?
I mean, I think for me, what I'm seeing is, more for my clients than for myself, is that it depends on where the business is at in terms of size and thought process. If they're big enough, let's say in the medium or large space, and they're in that cost cutting mode, you'll start to see a redistribution of things in terms of, where people choose to work, right? On the one hand, they might say, well, now we know that remote work is possible. So on the smaller companies are shifting completely to virtual, right? And they're not really thinking so much about whether it makes sense to come back into the office or not because they're so small. The mid-size, there are some that have switched to completely virtual just because they feel like it's too hard to manage the staggering of the workforce, right? 3 days a week in, 3 days a week out, that type of thing, where, it might just be easier just to be completely virtual, right? So that seems to be a challenge for people because of the things that go along with it. Like, can the people that are, have those alternating schedules manage childcare, right? School, things like that, right? I mean, all of that comes into play in terms of the ecosystem. And then in terms of the bigger companies, I think that, if they have, let's say, 1 or 2 locations, they know that in this new environment, they're going to have to get more square footage than they have before just because of distancing, right? I mean, you have the big corporations where they've spent years consolidating their footprint, right? In some cases, they've had 20 or 30 properties in an area, and they consolidated to 1 or 2. Now with this staggered workforce, right, coming in different times and things like that, they have to support 2 infrastructures, one the remote and one in the office, where now they're rebuilding and reconfiguring, because let's say in the past, everybody had their individual workstation. Now they have to do things like virtual desktops because, that person might not be able, there might not be enough real estate to have social distancing depending on who's in the office. They're going to have to do different things in order to adjust to that. So there's definitely a lot of that. And then there's also, take it a step further, they might see it as an opportunity to say, well, now that I know that remote work is possible, I may not need as much talent in the New York metro area. And as an example, I might, hire people from outside of New York where the salaries are less. And that's a cost saving measure that'll offset my increased cost in real estate if I choose to build out additional space, right? So they're looking at it more from not just, our people in the office, but, they're looking at it holistically and saying, well, how do we maintain our operating expenses and continue to be profitable, but also, have a workforce that's productive.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, so we were actually a distributed workforce before COVID hit. We, at our kind of most stable, I guess, were only 3 people in an office, and everybody else was spread out throughout the U.S. and actually the world. And when everything materialized, we said we don't need the office at all. It was really just a bunch of engineers sitting next to each other, in silence all day. All of our salespeople were fully distributed, just because we spent so much time investing in our CRM and our sales processes. So I think for, efficient companies, and I actually wrote a LinkedIn post on this about how TopTal was previously the largest totally distributed, I think at around 3,800. And then, Twitter comes along and says they're going to be, totally distributed at 48. You're going to see a lot more companies who are also going to try to keep up with that. And work from home, I think, turns from less of an operational discussion to more of a, like keeping up and lifestyle choice when hiring. If it's between like Twitter and Google, and Google tells me I have to come into the office 3 days a week, Twitter tells me I don't, and I'm an engineer getting, $350,000, $400,000. Yeah, it's a big difference maker.
Absolutely. Anita, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
What do you think?
So, yeah, hi everyone. I really wanted to just kind of be a fly on the wall. I'm very curious about the real estate situation going back in. I've also been able to successfully transfer my business to do all live stream online classes, and I've been amazed at how well it works, And I don't think that people, at least in New York City, are going to be wanting to do yoga in a room with other people anytime soon. I don't see that happening. I know, like I was renting space from a chiropractor physical therapy office. They've opened up. I think they're seeing like one person at a time. And so it's just, thank you for letting me listen, because this isn't my area, real estate, but I'm very interested in like what's going to happen with like fitness and, wellness stuff. So,
Awesome. Happy to have you. So happy to have you. Janu, I saw you jumped in late. Are you still there? Janu? How about the other West? How about Mark? Do you have anything to say on the topic? You're mute.
I certainly find some of the stories on the pivoting quite inspiring. It's not every day that you see companies remake themselves in like 3 weeks from one thing to another. So gives me, good hope for the future that people are, able to do this in a way that's so quick and so efficient. I would say, the only other thing a couple other things I'd say. One is if you have kind of found yourself on the winning end in some way of COVID, like Fran's mention of going from 3 to 26 markets, or Drew's, all of a sudden getting lots of traction. Yeah, I would lean into that. Meaning, if you're looking to do transactions, investment, I would look to sort of take advantage of that. I suspect there's going to be a disproportionate reaction favorably towards people that are on the positive side. And so, want to take advantage of that if you can while the quote bloom is on the rose, because probably overreaction is going to be greater than the reality. So all of a sudden everybody's going to think everybody's going to be virtual now, except for Fran's clients who seem to have their head in the sand. The only thing I'll mention is just that, one of our clients is a company called Cretech. Cretech is, puts the big real estate convention on. It's designed to put real estate players in touch with real estate technology companies. We unfortunately had a series of meetings where our clients could meet with real estate investors directly without the VCs, get canceled because of COVID. But I'd like to continue to sort of figure out, how we can expose some of our clients to prop tech. I think eventually it may be slowed down, but I think there's a real desire for real estate investors to get more directly connected to technology companies rather than working through a third party like a VC or a fund.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Cool. Anybody else have anything? We have about 1 minute left. Antonio, any finishing remarks over from Puerto Rico?
Hi.
Both of you can go.
Well, I'm sorry. Well, actually, everything with COVID, there's so many factors on the wall now, right? As far as business models being challenged with COVID, making the mistake of not designing new models with COVID in that sense of, just being optimistic, right? As far as COVID is going to happen, it's going to be gone, and the lessons we've learned from it, of course. Corporations and CFOs now have a lot of decision making to do as far as downsizing a lot of real estate that they don't need, being the fact that most people are working from home. So it's the culture change in the workspace. No longer is the cube farm where work happens. Now it's individualized, and that's where we come in as far as the shared economy, how we integrate into this new demand for workspaces, smaller spaces, individualized and whatnot. So I see it as an exciting time given the COVID, how things have come about. But I see many positives in KettleSpace and in other models such as mine that works with smaller groups, just come out on top.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's awesome. What's up, Drew? Just want to let everybody know that we are hosting a diversity in real estate webinar in 2 weeks. We've got some amazing panelists like NAREIT Government Relations, Nellie Galan, who's a Celebrity Apprentice, huge best-selling author, former CEO of Telemundo, some real estate developers who just work on diverse housing. This is going to be in 2 weeks if any of you guys want to join. Awesome. Thank you. Francesca, were you about to say something before Antonio started talking?
I just private messaged Anita. We actually surveyed our tenants about coming back to services, and we were shocked. Only 26% said that they were not comfortable coming back to services. And we're trying to slow down the timeline, so it was not the data that we wanted. But it was surprising, like 74% of people were like, yeah, as long as there's PPE, I'm there. It just seemed crazy.
Wow.
I'm curious, we can watch people vote with their feet as opposed to anything else. Yeah, sorry. I know we're sort of at time here, so I wanted to thank everyone for coming. This was amazing. Just to sort of harp, I think Daniel made a really good point around school and childcare. And I think that is probably the most important factor here that's going to dictate how a lot of this stuff goes down in the future. Because as Fran can speak to, as a lot of us can speak to, right? Like we got to look out for the little ones, and that is either going to hold people back or allow them the freedom to go back, right? Like there's a lot that hinges on childcare and its return, and also for the sanity of parents everywhere. So
we're going to do more of these with KettleSpace coming up. It's something that's really important to both of us, and so thank you everybody for joining. It was a really great group, and I said in my note there, I'm super impressed with you guys. You're doing some really amazing stuff in this time, so kudos to all you guys.
Amazing.
I agree.
Well, everyone get outside, enjoy the day. Hopefully it's beautiful where you are, and and refresh. And Antonio, it looks like I heard some amazing bird sounds. I've turned into a bird nerd during this, so definitely a little bit jealous there. Anyway, I'm going to drop off, but thank you guys. Thank you all for coming, and looking forward to next time.
Yeah, thank you everybody.
Bye-bye.
I'll email everybody.
Thank you.
Follow-up email. But yeah, be on the lookout. Thank you guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.